Howdy, people. If you're watching this, then you've seen the title of the video. It was the most obvious choice to make after the last one, so I might as well wrap up this quote-unquote mini-series. It's 3 videos. It's hardly a mini-series. Well, okay, maybe it could be considered mini. You know what? Semantics. I'm not going to get caught up on that of all things. Just started, goddammit. So, final episode in my prequels experience, because hey, only 3 prequels. I can't keep this going. Maybe someday do the originals, but I mean, these are basically kind of mini reviews. It's just with a little bit of how I interpreted things from younger age to older age. So, you know, take it kind of as a part review, part um, just interpretation of the films in general. That, especially coming from a prequels fan, that is different from the um, what I want to call it. I guess you could say party line, quote unquote. That is, if you're a Star Wars fan, especially in this freaking day and age and this year, you automatically have to be either a prequel fan or prequel hater. I refuse to believe that is the only 2 options you have. However, that seems to be the damn party line. Okay. That being said, let's talk about Episode 3. Now, Episode 3, sadly, will be the only Star Wars movie I will ever see in theaters, because I'm not going to go see the new ones. I'm not gonna talk about it. Because if I start talking about it, I won't get off it. But I'm not gonna see any new movies in the theaters. I'm not gonna see them on DVD or Blu-ray or online for free or whatever. Because I could do that if I wanted to. It's real freaking easy. And I would do that if I had to watch the movie. If someone had a gun to my head and said, "Hey, you have to watch the new Star Wars movies," I'd go, "Okay, fine, but I'm not buying it. I'm going to watch it for free online and snub Disney of their money. I don't give a crap if that's considered immoral or whatever. That's how much I hate these movies." But rest assured, Disney, if you somehow magically hear my words, I'm not going to watch your movie, even if I could watch it for free, which a lot of people will. So whatever, it's like I'm. Like I said, I'm already going off into the freaking ether of random BS coming out of my mouth. So, Episode 3 was the only movie I ever saw in theaters. I saw it probably 2 or 3, maybe 7 days a week after it came out in the theaters around the country. Um, I went with my mom, and I think my sister was there too, who I can't imagine why in the world she came. She freaking hates Star Wars. Or is so apathetic towards it that it was like being forced to go. It was like me being forced to go watch a freaking Twilight movie. It's like I I don't hate it as much as everyone else hates them, but I just feel nothing for those fucking films. And believe me, I've had to watch them. Oh God. Now, if you want to talk about movies to get mad at those. All right, fight the real enemy. Um, so I'm going to go watch it. And like I said before, it is my favorite Star Wars film. Yes, original trilogy fanboys, I know that in your mind, The Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars film of all time. Unless, of course, you are the biggest J.J. Abrams cocksucker. Then you're going to say, before the movie even comes out, that this new film is going to be better than Empire Strikes Back. Whatever, I don't care about your opinion, because nothing will ever change your opinion. Kind of like nothing will ever change mine, but I blame you, original trilogy fanboys, for making me this way. Getting off that, though, before I offend anyone who just likes the film and doesn't want to shove it down my throat. I like Episode 3 more than Episode 5, and as a funny side note, I keep mentioning this, but people don't seem to want to look into it themselves, do a little bit of research. You'll see that when Empire Strikes Back came out, I messed that up. Critics who went to go see Empire Strikes Back, Episode 5, said that compared to New Hope, Episode 4, it was darker and, they said it was darker, but in a bad way. It was a lot more serious than they thought it was going to be, in a bad way. And they said that, one of the characters was getting a little on their nerves. I forgot who they were. It was either Leia or, it was either Leia or Han, ironically, who apparently back in the day, '80s when Empire Strikes Back came out. One of them just pissed off critics who went to go see the film. I don't remember. Look it up yourself, but Empire Strikes Back, when it came out, was pretty panned. It was, it was well received amongst fans of the first movie, Episode 4. But amongst critics, it was pretty bad. Some moviegoers even said that it was bad, but then it was one of those culturally shift things where, over time, because the film became more popular, then the party line is, it was always popular. It was always considered good. Well, no, it wasn't always considered good. So, get off your high horse. And it's never going to be that way for the prequels. They're at best going to be okay films in the cultural, pop culture sense. But anyway, I went to go watch the film with my mom and my sister. Actually, ironically, if you want to ask anyone in my family, and my family knows I'm a freaking Star Wars nerd, and you want to ask, okay, if you ask someone looking in on my family who is the biggest Star Wars fan besides me, it'd probably be my mom, and she likes the prequels too, so what the fuck do I care? She's not, like a major Star Wars fan. She's like, yeah, these movies are enjoyable, and quite frankly, when she was younger and was forced to go watch the episode 4, 5, and 6, she found them kind of boring, but that's her opinion, not necessarily mine. But in that regard, she thinks the prequels are fine movies. She doesn't see what all the outrage is about, and I keep trying to explain to her why original trilogy fans are mad at the films, and she doesn't really get it. Perhaps it's a perspective thing. I don't know. It's funny to just snip it there. So, I want to go watch episode 3. I can't really find anyone out there who hates the initial, space battle over Coruscant. I'm sure there's somebody out there who finds it to be tedious or overblown or whatever, but if you're in a universe where you have interplanetary, intersystem travel across a galaxy in which wars between clones and droids happens with people, if you can't have an overblown space battle that is just nothing but sound, color, explosion, and jarring awesomeness, then, you're sucking the fun out of it for everybody. So frankly, if anyone does not like the opening space battle over Coruscant, you're free to your opinion. Let me know why, if you're somehow watching this, which I can't imagine why you'd be watching this if you don't like the prequels in general, but whatever. Maybe you're looking for a different perspective. Tell me why you wouldn't like the space battle. But then again, like I said, I'm only asking that because I've found nobody who yet, even people who hate the prequels, are like, oh yeah, that space battle, oh, it sucked so much. I was like, it's always like, yeah, it opened up fine. Basically, to me, that means, oh, the space battle was good. So if you didn't like it, let me know. I frankly found the most boring space battle in all of Star Wars moviedom, the movies, to be space battle, well, you have to take into account some of the films don't really have a space battle, so, episode 2 doesn't really have a space battle. Well, it has Obi-Wan chasing Jango. I'm getting off topic, so I'm not even going to go there. So I loved it. I loved that the interactions between Obi-Wan and Anakin were starting to finally get to the frickin' point where it was a little more fluid, a little more believable, and I think it was because Hayden and Ewan were, around each other a lot more, so they were getting more comfortable with each other as actors. Perhaps George had learned a couple things about their methods and whatnot in episode 2. Of course, he was still highly controlling of the situation and how they reacted, how they acted in any given scene, and that affected things later on in the film. But I think this space battle, the dialogue, and then it transferred over into the Invisible Hand scenes on Grievous's flagship. It's called the Invisible Hand, if you didn't know that. I think it translated well. And then you come to realize after a while those two actually aren't in a lot of scenes together in the film. There's maybe one or two scene interactions between them where I don't believe it, and it's sadly Hayden's side that's failing. And like I've said before, Hayden Christensen can friggin' act. He's considered a good Canadian actor, and I don't even need to tag on the Canadian. He's just a good actor. But George, it's been known that of all the characters and actors within episodes 2 and 3, that George had the most just strict controls on in terms of how he acted, how he talked, whatever. It was Hayden because he was playing Anakin because he had to fit the role of becoming Darth Vader. And then like up next after that's Padme because she has to fit a certain role and get the ball rolling for Luke and Leia. So, that out of the way. I loved the dialogue. I loved the invisible hand scenes. Once again, oh god, I remember those awesome episode 3 trailers back in the day when you got little snippets of Grievous, and I was a little kid, and I remember I'd seen Grievous before in the original Clone Wars cartoon series made by the people who made Samurai Jack. I wasn't that into him, and I know people love him now. In fact, I love his scenes now in that cartoon series. I was just way too young to really give too much of a shit about this cyborg, admittedly kicking ass. But I think what turned me off to his original Inception was his voice. A lot of people love it, okay? And you know what? If you like Grievous's original voice, more power to you. I really don't hate it. It's just not really. It doesn't like make me. It doesn't really like make me like the villain any more than he already is. Interesting. I don't know why. I like the film interpretation of the voice, not the film. Not the film invocation of his character, because the film really does not give his character much to do, and then the trailers hyped him up kinda to be, the Maul or Dooku of the film, and then he's like in half of it, which admittedly he couldn't have been in the film that long. We should have had like a 2.5 film or something, because there's just so much they have to jam pack into these films, and it hurts them so much. So Grievous was going to suffer either way. But I loved his intro. I liked that he had the cough. I liked that when I got older, I realized that he was Vader Beta. Basically, it was like, okay, let's take a warrior who's severely damaged, freaking emotionally, you could say mentally, you could say, and then obviously, physically, and let's turn him into a bastion of destruction and a pawn, essentially. Sidious and Dooku did that to Grievous, and he turned out to be, for the most part, a success, if you're going off, original cartoon, comics, books, and not what the Clone Wars did to him, where he's losing to Gungans, for God's sakes. Then yeah, it basically succeeded, and then Vader became Grievous 2.0. Of course, maybe that wasn't the original Inception, where it's like, well, Palpatine didn't intend for Anakin to end up in the frickin' Darth Vader suit, but hey, we did it with Grievous, we might as well do it with Anakin. Shove him in a suit, make him a cyborg, make him incontinent without Imperial support for that freaking outfit he has on, and there you go, you got Grievous 2.0. Unless you live in the fanfiction verse in which he's always fixed by very simple cloning means or, healing methods on some random ass planet that apparently Vader and the whole Empire is so dense about until that moment in the story. But I'm not gonna knock fanfiction writers; they have more sense than Disney. Going on from there, I liked Grievous's intro. I liked his voice. I liked he had that cough. I knew he carried that over from the cartoon. Of course, they changed that later on, how he got that cough. But originally, it was like, okay, Mace Windu crushed his freaking chest, which, if you know anything about Force Crush, you're like, Windu, what did you just do there? Because you just did a really bad move there. But, you could give Windu a pass with, like, his whole Vapod idea, which is his lightsaber combat methodology, or whatever you want to call it. His lightsaber form is Vapod, variants to Juyo. And then of course it's like, oh, okay, so now he has a cough because his lungs were damaged or something. Well, no, now he just always had the cough. I don't know. I liked that original Inception better than anything that came after that. But then what we get in the film is, Dooku shows up after, they find Palpatine up in the observation tower. I guess some sources call it a throne room. It's like, so every Providence class destroyer or carrier has a throne room? That's weird. Why don't you just call it the observation deck? But, I believe it's an observation deck and not a throne room, but the fact that there is kind of a spinning chair just right there, it kind of makes it look like a throne. It'd be like where Thrawn would sit if he had to run a Providence. Thrawn, who no longer exists in canon. Yeah, he maybe does. Who knows? Getting him from there. But then we get Dooku, and once again, Christopher Lee. I love him. I loved him. He's great in basically everything I see him in, and he's kind of like not an A-list actor, but a guy can act, and he's in things that you just go, oh, Christopher Lee, that's awesome. But then once again, you get Dooku thrown in your face, and I know some of you are Dooku fans, or if you want to go by his thrown-on Sith name of Tyrannus or Tyrannus, then yeah, you like him, and you know what? Fine, if you like Dooku, that's fine. I think he's a pretty decent Sith. He's got his own like little niche about him. But then they give him nothing to do. He says 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, one of which was cut out, and actually you saw the freaking scene in the Episode 3 video game, which actually was a very fun video game for a movie video game in my opinion. There's the cutscene, he shows up, they cut out some dialogue, he says, your swords, which that's strange, lightsabers, and you don't want to, what's the line exactly? Oh, bugger, I should know this. You don't want to get, whatever, he doesn't want them to do violence in front of the Chancellor. I forget the line exactly, it's been a little while since I've seen the film again, sad. And they, the video game has it to where Obi-Wan and Anakin just kind of pop open on their lightsabers, and then Dooku does the same. There isn't any banner back and forth. But then Dooku, unlike the film, says just because there's 2 of you, don't think you have the advantage or something like that. And I'm like, you couldn't keep that 5-second, snippet of him saying one more line of dialogue in the film of him just saying, just because there's more of you, don't believe you have the advantage. That would help imply to people who don't give a shit about comics or books or any of the further lore, imply that the motherfucker at least has immense talent beyond what we saw in Episode 2, which admittedly his duel was a showcase of Makashi and how it's basically fencing to the extreme, like noble fencing. But, whatever, that was just a little observation on my part. He duels, he loses, he gets his hands cut off. Again, as a kid, as a kid, even at the age I was, which, oh god, it was 10 years from now? Or 10 years past? 10 years from now. Yeah, that's when Episode 3 is coming out. No, 10 years past, because it came out in 05, right? Good lord. Oh man, I was so much younger back then. But even at that point in my life, I knew that Anakin was going to become Darth Vader, so I knew him killing Dooku was a sign of his impending doom. I don't know why I do this to myself. Sometimes I go into films where there is a predetermined ending, be it a prequel or a story turned into, like a book turned into a movie. You know what the ending's going to be if you know anything about pop culture. And I'm the idiot in there sitting in King Kong saying, okay, King Kong, you can escape and live, and I won't have to cry because you get killed. Nope, he dies. And I cried like a little bitch for the Peter Jackson version of that film. Still love that film, by the way. The Peter Jackson version of King Kong. Random. So I was kind of in there, like, as my dumbass fat little kid self going, oh, Anakin won't turn into Darth Vader, I believe in him, because as a little kid I did like his character even back then, and I still like him now, and I like Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker, whatever. But we all know how that turned out. So, I mean, him killing Dooku was kind of like, oh, okay. We're going down this path, I know it. And then, they save, quote-unquote, Palpatine. They get captured by Grievous. Grievous has an interesting interaction with them. Does fuck all except get thrown out into the vacuum of space and then tether himself back to his own ship. Interesting, cool scene. Whatever. Didn't really do anything. They crash the invisible hand, what's left of it, back onto Coruscant and save the day. I guess I gotta assume the space battle is over. I mean, if you're looking at it from a movie perspective, if you read the book, then you know the space battle ended with a Confederate retreat. But, I mean, if you're just in the film and then it's just like, oh, screen wipe. Well, what happened? Did they leave, or did you? Are they still up there fighting? Well, no, they eventually left after getting the shit beaten out of them and losing the fucking Chancellor, which was the reason why the Confederates thought that they were there to begin with, or Separatists if you don't like using Confederates, whatever. They're the Confederacy of Independent Systems. I'm sorry, they're Confederates. Doesn't mean they're Republican or Unionists. They're just Republicans. Not. I'm moving on. You get, what do you get? Then, like I said before in episode 2, there are some scenes that aren't aging that well in episode 3 with the CGI. And the first scene in episode 3 that I found myself seeing again going, oh, that didn't age well, was when they landed, and the Chancellor is back at the Senate building. Mace greets them, calls Grievous a coward, and Obi-Wan is bantering with Anakin. Anakin's like, no, come along. That was one of the dialogue. One of the. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay. One of the scenes where the dialogue between Obi-Wan and Anakin seems a little stilted. It's fine for the most part. Again, to me, to you, it could be one of the dialogue scenes that just completely break the movie for you. If it is, I mean, it is what it is to you. To me, it's fine. But the main point I was trying to make was that the CGI is looking particularly dated at this scene because you get a clear shot. Sadly, they thought this was a good idea, of the interior of the Senate as Mace is talking to Palpatine. So behind Mace. And essentially it's this completely green screened CGI big, empty, chamber full of pillars, and it's just like, it's not there, it's not real. Once Anakin goes in and talks to Padme, it looks a little better, but you can tell, maybe the actual pillar they're standing by maybe as a set piece, the rest of it, probably not. And that's, it is what it is. It's just one of those scenes I noticed where it's like, yeah, CGI didn't age that well. And for you people who are really excited about these new films coming up, just look at the trailer and don't fucking tell me that these films are not filled up to their fucking neck in CGI, okay? It might be good CGI because CGI has gotten a lot better since 2005, okay? It might be good CGI, and don't tell me that just because you hated the CGI in the prequels, and suddenly this CGI is just going to change your mind this CGI is going to change your whole mind on the whole CGI matter in the first place, because you're not going to be able to come to me and tell me, oh, CGI makes a movie horrible if you're a prequels hater, and then go and say, oh no, the CGI in episodes 7, 8, and 9 eventually completely changed your mind on the matter. Okay, maybe the CGI is good. Okay, but it's CGI. You have to take a stance of, do you like this? Do you like CGI in principle, or do you not? Even if you like these new films and you like the CGI, that's fine. But tell me if a CGI makes or break a film after you see this film. Because if it makes a film, I don't know how you're going to make that argument. If it breaks a film, then it breaks a film. Okay? I'm not saying you can't hate CGI in one movie, and say, you love CGI. I don't know anyone who would really say that. All I'm saying is that people who hate CGI in the prequels seem to always take the stance that CGI in general just always ruins a movie, even though most movies nowadays use heavy amounts of CGI. So you're either going to have to take a stance of whether or not CGI as a whole is bad, or whether or not CGI is okay as long as people actually work hard on it. And you know what? For what they had in 2005, they worked pretty hard on these films. I mean, you can't make the Star Wars universe without either going through the extra hard labor of making all the set pieces and getting all the models and whatnot that episodes 4, 5, and 6 did, which was a task that they completed fairly well and they deserve credit for. But don't look at the CGI that was there in the 70s, 80s, and later 80s of episodes 4, 5, and 6 and tell me that CGI looks amazing, okay? There are parts of the original trilogy CGI that just looks awful. I'm not talking about the stuff that's added later by George. I'm talking about the stuff that was in there originally. It just looks bad, okay? CGI from those times does not age that well at all. Even with remastered editions, they've tried it with Star Wars. It doesn't work out that well. So that's my little tirade on that matter. Again, if you don't like the prequels because of the heavy CGI, and you love this film, this new film, despite the fact it is obviously saturated with immense fucking scenes of nothing but CGI, explain to me your reasoning, and explain to me your stance on the CGI. I mean, you can't do that now because the film isn't out yet, but have at it when you get there, because I've seen snippets of the new trailer. Sadly, because I don't want to see anything to do with this damn ass of a movie. And it's nothing but a goddamn CGI, like, it looks like a goddamn video game. For people who want to complain about CGI, you're not going to come out and say the CGI for these new films looks weird. I've even talked to Tim, if you know who Tim is from Timpedia. If not, go check out his channel, he's great. And yes, there's just something about the CGI in these new films, even from the trailer, that I look at it and I'm like, this looks weird. I don't know what it is. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. I'm just saying that from the perspective of a person who admittedly is not excited about these films, if I try my hardest to look at it from a standpoint of level-headedness and just cool interpretation and looking of the trailers in and of themselves and not with my bias, there's something about the CGI that just looks weird to me. I don't know if it's because they keep showing that stupid one snippet of the Millennium Falcon and the TIE Fighters, and the TIE Fighters look really a little too glimmery, and the green cannon fire looks way too, like, saturated great. I need to get off this subject because I'm going to keep going on, and nobody wants to hear me talk about these films anymore. So I'm not going to. From this point on, I'm going to try and limit myself to quipping them and saying, like, a second of fuck yourself to the movie. Back to episode 3. You get your first interaction between Anakin and Padme. It's probably the most believable, I'd say, quote-unquote, interaction between those two characters in terms of, like, okay, she lets out that they're going to have kids, or a kid at that point, and, you know, like other people have said, the reaction of Anakin is believable. The reaction of Padme is believable. The fact that having a kid is going to ruin their whole situation, especially if they actually want to raise the kid, is a believable scenario that will never be played out because of, you know, what happens inside the universe. But it's a very believable fear on both of them that, well, essentially, you're going to have a senatorial scandal with her. You're going to have a Jedi scandal with him. It's going to be a galactic scandal on that level of a senator and a Jedi were together, and they happen to be probably the most famous, if not most famous, then like one of the most famous Jedi and senators in the entire goddamn galaxy. You know, they'd be stars, infamous everywhere but the unknown regions who couldn't give a fuck about anything going on inside the Galactic Republic. So, I mean, it was believable to me. Other people have said it's a believable scene. If you don't like it, tell me why. If there's a scene I find good or interesting about these films and you don't like it, I already know what your argument probably is going to be, but if you have like something special you want to chime in, just leave it in the comments and I'll see what you have to say and tell you why I disagree or why you have a valid point. Going on from there, I can't review this film verbatim because I'm already freaking nearly 30 minutes in. So, blah blah blah. We get eventually to the dream. I thought, it's hard for me now, not taking canon into account, because I'm not taking canon into account, I'm taking legends into account. There's, like, theories, like 3 prominent ones, basically, how his dreams came to be of Padme's death. Either A, the Force is warning him that, basically, if he commits actions trying to prevent his visions from coming true, he will, by doing so, make his visions come true. That's A. In which case, the Force is really abstract in how it warns people. B, Palpatine is literally sending him dreams and visions to freaking make him go nuts, which that one is more prominent amongst most Star Wars fans I know. They seem to think that Palpatine is somehow manipulating his dreams or whatnot. Um, there was a C in there. I just can't remember what it was. It was either the Force, Palpatine, or fucking bad dreams. Honestly brought on by just the fact that, or no, okay. C was basically he sees the future, and there is like no choice in it. Even his actions taken to prevent the future from happening have no bearing. Basically, it's the future. The future is set in motion. You can't escape it. This is what's going to happen. There was no choice in the matter. No choice in even trying to stop it from happening, leading to that choice. No, it was just the choice. Always was the choice. Nothing but what's going to happen. So, I mean, I don't subscribe to that one. I tend to believe too that it was more of a Palpatine manipulation thing. However, I am not against the idea that the Force was abstractly trying to warn him, or he was getting an abstract warning vision from the Force. I just think that it makes a little more sense for Palpatine to be the one doing that, especially if you take Plagueis into account, which I do, because it's Legends. So, whatever. So yeah, you get all that. You get a couple more interactions between Anakin and Obi-Wan. The Council being dick to Anakin. Again, I accept it as the interpretation of the Jedi Council is not supposed to be acting this way. They're acting way too political. They're getting way too involved in this espionage and this back and forth with the Chancellor. They don't like him anymore because he keeps getting more powers. He keeps instituting new laws. He keeps getting emergency, like basically re-elected to office. I don't know if anyone's actually electing him or if they're just like, no, we're going to prolong his term. I believe they just prolong the term. They don't actually hold any elections or anything. And they're like, oh yeah, we're going to use Anakin, the most unstable person we could ever use, because we're going to assume that he can handle the stress. Not even taking into account the fact that this is a guy who, even by the movie standards, is a galactic hero, basically is supposed to be this banner carrier of the Jedi Order and the Republic throughout the war, and the galaxy, and we're going to add more pressure to this guy by saying, okay, now we want you to spy on a guy who has treated you better than we have, in terms of like emotional support and whatnot, and we want you to spy on him, drag information out of him, and then come back to us and, tell us what he says or whatnot, because we're going to appoint you, he's going to appoint you his own, like, stupid little representative on the Jedi Council, which is like, really, Palpatine? You're really going to do... I mean, of course, Palpatine is Palpatine. At that point, he was, like, testing the Jedi, like, hey, I'm going to poke the bear. I'm going to appoint a Jedi to the Council and, essentially subvert your own control over your organization. And, I mean, it honestly didn't matter to him if they said no or not, but they do it because they want him to spy. And, I found it to be interesting. I found it a little odd. Because, like I said up in episode 2, except for, now it's not just Obi-Wan, now it's the whole Jedi Council. They are forced to act and talk about Anakin in such a way in which it's like, why are you not like him this, like, why are you so, like, not against, but, what the word being, antagonistic toward him, really. Mace especially. Yoda, not so much. Yoda's more willing to give him leeway. Always has been, seemingly. Except kind of in episode 1 where he was a little more vocal about being worried about trading someone that old and fearful. But in episodes 2 and 3, he for the most part was pretty okay with Anakin. But then Mace always had his own feelings on the matter. He always seemed to not like the fact that of all people who could be the chosen one, it was Anakin, because I don't think he necessarily trusted him. No, of course he didn't trust him, because he says when he's going to go off to kill Palpatine, if what you say is true, and I, will discover it to be true, and I take care of this, then you will have earned my trust. Mace, that's not a very good argument for liking you, because you're essentially telling a guy, hey, that information you told me where this guy you really like turns out to be an asshole, and the asshole who I am actually turns out to be right, and you basically subvert this guy who you at this moment still think is a good guy, but maybe does some bad things, and he has the power to save your wife. If that turns out to be true, I kill him, you can't save your wife, whatever, all this information, all this hoopla comes out about you, bad shit's going to happen to you, in the mind of Anakin, mind you. You've earned my trust, and that should be enough for you to do anything I say. It's essentially me saying, look, if I tell you to go kill somebody, despite the fact that it goes against the order to kill somebody out of desire to kill that person, and you go and do it, you've earned my trust, Anakin. It's circular logic of, hey, go do something for me, and I'll trust you then. But I know that's kind of how the trust system works, but it doesn't really work when it's like this seedy kind of, political way of looking at things of, hey, go bankrupt your friend, your best friend, and then I'll trust you. It's like, motherfucker, I don't know you that well, and you're not really my friend. You're just a guy who I have to pay respect towards because you're an elder in our nomadic kind of warrior organization. So, that's how I interpreted that scene. And then skipping a couple of scenes, Anakin seeing Obi-Wan off to Utapau. It's sad that that's like their last cordial interaction between one another. I thought it was okay. I know probably some people would say that scene was a little stiltedly acted on Anakin's part. Mind you, it's well known at this point that Hayden Christensen almost practically begged George to give him more freedom to make the character quote-unquote less whiny. But then George was like, oh no, it's fine. He's not whiny. He's just, do this, that, just take me at my word for why he's doing it, how he's doing it, and for what purpose I'm making you say things as I am at this moment. And, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But in that moment where he's seeing Obi-Wan off, I did feel a sense of, oh, okay, this is good. I like this is a goodbye from Anakin to Obi-Wan, that he'll see him again soon. But I always took it as kind of a scene as a double purpose of Anakin is saying bye to Obi-Wan because the scene is him saying bye to Obi-Wan, and two, Anakin is saying bye to Obi-Wan because essentially Anakin is leaving after this point. He's not going to see Obi-Wan for a long time because Anakin ceases to be Anakin by the time Obi-Wan comes to see him. At that point, they see each other again as Vader. And then when he sees Obi-Wan again, it's when he's freaking saved and, he returns to the light when he's dying. And that essentially... So, from the point where Obi-Wan leaves for Utapau, up until Darth Vader dies and he's returned to the light side of the Force, saves Luke, he dies on the Death Star, that goodbye from Utapau, they did not meet up again until he died, and they met up as Force ghosts. That's what I always took it as. Maybe I'm being a little too deep there. Maybe, I don't know, I'm expecting a little too much out of a goodbye, but I mean, that's what I always felt, because it was kind of like a brotherly, friendly kind of goodbye, I'll see you again soon. I'm sorry that I act like an asshole sometimes. I know you're trying to help. I know you're my old master, whatever. And Obi-Wan's trying to say, no, you actually are worth a lot of praise that you get. Just don't let it go to your head. But he does. You're worth some of the praise, or a lot of the praise you get. You're fine. Obi-Wan is showing that he cares about him in his own way. And I mean, they show fairly well that they care about one another as you want to call them, brothers, friends, whatever. Obi-Wan leaves, and that's it. That's the last time they will see one another as they are in that moment, as friends, as brotherly affectionate towards one another, because then after that, the other one wants to kill the other one, and the one who, and that one being Obi-Wan, feels crushed and devastated that he let Anakin become Vader, as he thinks he does, and that he couldn't stop him, and that he lost someone who he considered a really good friend at this point, and not just his pupil, his Padawan. I'm maybe being too deep, I don't know, but that's how I always took it. And then, of course, you get like the opera scene in the movie. Everyone loves the opera scene. The opera scene's atmosphere is just great. Even the dialogue is good, and the acting between the two characters is good because, it required Hayden Christensen to be, more just quiet, more pensive, listening, a little just. He adds in little snippets here and there when Palpatine's talking. Ian McDiarmid delivers the whole tale of Plagueis very well. And everyone likes that scene. I like the scene. If you don't like the scene, tell me why. So yeah, we get from there. Yoda goes to Kashyyyk. The Kashyyyk opening scenes were great. I love the battle. Yes, it's all CGI, but the Kashyyyk scenes, to me, the CGI has aged good, but to be fair, the whole goddamn scene is probably CGI, because, yeah, maybe you need, like, guys in clone outfits walking around, and that's it, or, like, trooper outfits, but then the rest of the scene is CGI, and it's because of that, you don't register that it's CGI, because if the whole scene is CGI, then it's just like looking at a screen of, a video game screen, therefore it's immersive in and of itself. It's not real life trying to mesh with CGI and the other way around, so it worked for me. I like the Kashyyyk battle scenes. The little naval invasion by the droids was fun to watch, because, the droids at this point had become kind of, in Episode 3, the droids were a threat still, but it was obvious that, the Separatists were not doing all that well. And if you know the lore of Star Wars, then you realize it's not because they don't lack the ability to fight the war. It's because Palpatine from upstairs is saying, no, don't do anything, because technically you could win the war. But, that's not the point. It's just like the droids were like kind of a secondary issue at this point in the film. Then, of course, you get the best scene in the film, probably. I would argue it is the best scene. I know plenty of people think that it's at least a good scene from the prequels, even if they don't like them. At least some people can admit to that. Others can't. But it's basically the scene where Anakin is looking out the council chamber's window. The council chamber's window. He's looking towards Padme. They can't see one another. Obviously, they're freaking miles away from one another. She's looking out her window. They're obviously looking towards one another. There's no dialogue, except for like the little quick voiceover that Anakin, hears. It's supposed to be a mental thought. You get that really... It's strange how Star Wars has always been bombastic in sound and music, and only rarely does it have music that's kind of more subtle. Even the subtle music is kind of like, fluty. You get kind of flute notes and it's very low tones, and then it just adds weird shit like that. But this was like the only scene I can remember in a Star Wars film until 7 comes out, which I don't care about, where the tonal shift is just like, what the fuck? Where'd this come from? Because all of a sudden you get this kind of like low rumble, and then it just this skin crawlingly effective rising tone of whatever instrument that was, and then the female vocals come in, and you're just like, what is happening? Who took over the audio here? Who what? And obviously John Williams. Obviously the guy knows how to freaking make music, and he knows how to set a scene, and I don't know where he came up with that. But I'm glad he came up with that, because, it's a song that I can listen to on my own, at least looped, because then it does change into the regular Star Wars of weird shit like that. But it's weird to me, because I listen to it and I'm like, this is not a song I necessarily want to listen to because it makes me pumped or makes me happy or makes me anything. It's more like interesting music that kind of sets your mind into a weird state of pensiveness almost because of that scene of, they're looking at each other, shit is about to go down, this is the point in the movie where the movie is telling you this is the point of divergence. He's either going to sit in that chamber and let Mace Windu kill Palpatine, which, if you're like me, you think Mace actually was winning that duel and not just Palpatine putting on a scene for Anakin. So I mean that's I always have thought that if Mace, given time, would have killed Palpatine because of extenuating circumstances. I mean, of course, book sources basically state that those two could have basically fought forever because they were basically equals for one another. I, however, am of the opinion that Mace eventually could have won that duel, but it was a toss-up between the two, but as the duel was going in the film, Mace was going to win. That's my opinion. If you don't think it was Mace actually winning the duel and it was more of a Palpatine somehow knowing to put on a show for Anakin, that's fine. That's your interpretation. My interpretation is the other one. But by that music that this is the scene where Anakin is either going to sit there and let Mace kill Palpatine, which isn't going to happen, sadly, or he's going to go rush in there like an idiot. He's going to do something. Mace is going to get killed, unless Disney has their way. Look that up for yourself. And Darth Vader's going to be born. And what's going to happen. You're just kind of like, you're sitting there, and and Hayden Christensen pulls out his outward emotional acting here, which is just, he's really good at emoting expression-wise and body language. Even if you don't like him as an actor, despite his better films, as a physical emoter, both in his face and out of his body, he's really good at it. And in that scene, he's obviously just, sitting there going, "Oh God, what?" He's just, you can tell the thought process in his brain right now is like, okay, just sit here. But if I don't get up and do something, then I'm going to lose my mind because he's going to go kill Palpatine, and if he kills Palpatine, then Padme's going to die, and then if she dies, and I have these kids, if the kids die with her, then I'll freaking lose my mind. You can tell he's going all over the place. His mind is popping off, and he starts crying because he honestly he's defeated. He doesn't know. He doesn't have any other option but to go to Palpatine and essentially and Mason basically go, "No, don't kill him. Just imprison him, okay? Just let me put him in prison and force the information out of him that can help me save Padme." And of course that doesn't happen. So I mean that is the divergence point. At that point he's decided it's either going to be Mace, the Jedi, or Palpatine, and he chooses Palpatine. So I love that scene. It's only literally like a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes at most long. Just the scene where the music gets pensive and it's the shot between Padme and Anakin. But I honestly just adore that scene because to me that felt like that scene more than any other scene in all the prequels was really, that scene right there was the scene that George was looking for when he was making these prequels, where it was like, where's the scene where it's over and the prequels are basically over at that point. And what I mean is like the pre-Empire age is over. It's that scene. Because after that scene, the Empire rises. That's it. That is the scene where the Republic dies, is when Anakin chooses Palpatine over Windu, over the Jedi. And it was the fulcrum point, and it's just, I felt like if more of that idea and more of that way of that scene was taken and put into better use in all three of the prequels, people would have loved the prequels. If that kind of style was used, maybe, I don't want to say the prequels should have been more depressing, because I mean there are some parts of the prequels where it's a little depressing, be it your reasons because it's bad, or be it because there's actually depressing shit going on in the prequels. But I do think that the prequels suffer a little bit too much from a little too much kiddie focus, maybe a little bit. I mean, Star Wars is always going to have kids going to it, but I felt like that scene was more adult than kid centered. It was more, if you're a kid, you can tell there's something about this scene that's eerie, but if you're an adult, you're kind of sitting there going, "Oh, this is it, isn't it? This is the point where Darth Vader is essentially born and Anakin stops being Anakin because he has to either choose Palpatine or the Jedi." And I don't know. I just wish the way that scene was filmed, the way the emotion in that scene, despite nothing being said, except for the dialogue, the voiceover. I wish more that had been transferred over to the rest of the prequels so that I wouldn't be sitting here, basically doing these little recordings if the prequels were maybe a little darker in tone, maybe just a little darker, just a little more pensiveness, a little more, foreboding than it was. I mean, as it was fine to me, but not to most people. Got way off track there. My apologies. So then, of course, Anakin goes. He slash Palpatine kills Windu. I mean, he chops off his hand. Windu gets thrown out the goddamn window. He's dead. All right. Anyone who wants to argue with me that he's not dead, go to Disney's canon. Stay away from me. Mace Windu died, and you know what? He's not lesser for it because he was robbed of his kill. And you get that. Go from there. Anakin going in with the troopers, whether you believe it to be the 501st or you don't buy into the 501st and you don't care, he goes in with troopers and he starts massacring the Jedi. And then you get another fairly powerful scene. I remember, I was such a lame little kid. I started to tear up. I admit it. I started to tear up when the Jedi started to get just mowed down where they were. I mean, again, the music is more just kind of clear-cut, brooding sadness and not kind of the usual dark tone of Star Wars where it's either no music except for a little bit subtle or just kind of like weird like flatline music with little like jumps and like just stuff like that. I'm not explaining it very well, but again, it was just very basic. Shit is going wrong. Shit is going wrong. You know that everything is over at this point. This is just the beginning of the shit that's coming. And you get people who, if you were a fan at that point of the lore, you had already read books. Starting with Phantom Menace, some of these characters are already made into canon because of the movies. Characters like Luminara and Barriss Offee, of course you didn't see them die essentially in the film, or explicitly in the film, but you knew that they were dying. I mean, you knew them already. You knew Plo Koon was. Or Plo, if you want to call him Plo Koon. Kid Fisto gets killed with Palpatine, so you're just kind of like, whoa, shit, he's dead. You get Ayla Secura, she gets mowed down by a bunch of clones who apparently are trigger happy. You get Ki-Adi-Mundi, who for the most part of the prequels always seemed just kind of like a very relaxed dude as a Jedi. He wasn't like beating down on Anakin, he wasn't saying anything mean to him, and later lore shows that he was actually a pretty okay guy with Anakin and even got his respect. And he turns around with this sad face about him where he just turns around and he's just like, you can tell in that moment it was oh fuck moment, and not in the funny way. It was like, oh fuck. No, it was like, oh, I know what's happening now. And you can tell he looks betrayed. And that's how most Jedi feel, because they had actually become friends with the clones that they had under them. Some a little closer than friends, but I refuse to acknowledge that those Jedi exist. It's only the one, really, and she ends up dying anyway. But you can tell it's a betrayed face he makes, where he's like, wow. Yeah, that's a better interpretation. He turns around and he's like, wow, really? This is how it's going to end? Not me fighting the droids, but you guys killing me? And they shoot him down. He blocks a couple of bolts. He falls over. You get, it's not, is it Adi Gallia? I think it's Adi Gallia. No, wait, did Adi die? It's either Stace Ali or Adigalia. One of them on the speeder bike just gets fucking blown to smithereens, and I mean, just her speeder goes freaking careening into the water. She's obviously dead. Um, then you see the temple. You see hundreds of Jedi fighting, them getting mowed down because no matter how good of a Jedi you are, if you're getting shot in that many directions by those many troopers, I mean, the Battle of Geonosis already proved that you don't have to be that great of a shot. You just have to utterly overwhelm the Jedi or the Sith, unless they're like Sidious or Vitiate level with the Force, where it's just like, oh, there's a bunch of people around me, go away and throw your hands out, and they go flying. Then yeah, you're protected. But if you're just a Jedi Knight who isn't that focused in the Force, and you're just forced to use your lightsaber to defend against a whole army on your back, while you're being shot at all sides, you're going to die. So, and then of course Anakin goes, and it's implied that he's going to go kill a bunch of children. And a funny little snippet. I distinctly remember when that scene came up, and my sister, who didn't like these films, was sitting there, and I barely caught it, but I heard her go, "Oh no!" She doesn't even like Star Wars, but I think maybe at that point she was getting a little into the film. Like, okay, I guess I'll watch it. Actually try and give a damn about the story. And at that point, when I heard that, I was kind of like, yeah, because it was great to me that someone who didn't like Star Wars is seeing that scene just went, "Oh no," because you knew what was being implied there. It was a little in your face, and you're just like, "Yep, he just killed a bunch of children." you know, uh, I need to stop laughing. God, awful. And then you see, excuse me, I've been talking a while. My voice is starting to get a little hoarse. You see Obi-Wan get shot by freaking Cody. You see Yoda basically, and I think that's what's most effective to people who say that the scene did get to them. It was, all the Jedi dying is sad, but what got to most people, including me, wasn't necessarily all the Jedi dying, although it is sad. What got to people was Yoda's reaction to it, because I think most people at that point had accepted Yoda as a CGI person in episodes 2 and 3, and then later 1 because of remastered edition. And 4, 5, and 6, and you knew that he was a wise old sage, especially in episodes 1, 2, and 3. He's shown to be more wise and not necessarily kooky, as he gets a little kooky. I'd say kooky in 4, 5, and 5 and 6. He's not in 4. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but he does get a little kind of like a little too kind of, he's been alone way too long. But even then, he has his moments in 5 and 6. But you see him, and he's basically like, he's feeling and sensing all these people dying. And especially since if you're a fan of the lore, you know that he's trained a lot of these people who are dying. So he's closely attached to all of them, even if, attachment's forbidden, but whatever. And he's, grabbing at his chest, grabbing at his head, and he's basically almost falling over you. Even the Wookiees, Chewbacca, and, the chieftain, whose name I should know because goddamn it's been said many times, but they're just looking at him like, what's wrong with you, and then the troopers come up and he pulls a badass move on them. And that it was those coupling of scenes that really made the movie for me. And then stuff kind of gets a little political after that, but it's still good because you get Palpatine calling for the formation of an empire, the whole Senate going, "Oh yeah, we're mindless slaves. Empire sounds good. We tried for 3-4 years to hold a republic together. Why not reform into an empire as shit actually looks like it's going up for us?" Fucking. Of course, at that point, it was declared that he was puppeteering the whole Senate at that point, so it didn't even matter. Thunderous applause. That was a good line, in my opinion. I mean, it was effective in how it basically stated, yeah, a lot of dictatorships rise to cheer rather than, people protesting. So it was a little commentary on the whole ideal of dictatorship. Subtle, quote unquote. Question mark. Anyway. And then, Anakin goes off to Mustafar. He slaughters all of them while Palpatine's giving his little speech. Yoda and Obi-Wan have met up already. and the music there picks up again where he's killing all of the separatist leaders. If you were sad at Newt Gunray's death, who are you? Because I don't know anyone who was sad at Newt Gunray's death. Newt Gunray. Okay, you could be sad for Newt Gunray dying if you realize Newt Gunray was just nothing but a freaking pawn and an idiot who always just did what Palpatine told him, like an idiot, and then you realize the guy probably did want peace at this point because he was scared shitless, and then Vader just shows up, slices him, doesn't even care, talk to him. So maybe, but honestly, Newt Gunray is still kind of a slime ball, anyways. So yeah, and then I forgot what scene it's coupled with, but then you get the scene of Anakin standing on the deck on Mustafar after he's killed everybody inside, and you get what the soundtrack is called Anakin's Dark Deeds, I believe, and it combines the music from when he's actually killing the separatists into that scene on the deck where he's just looking out into the freaking fire. Again, supposed to be an interpretation of he's looking into hell. I mean, it's not subtle, but I mean that's what it was going for. He's looking into hell because that's where he is, and he's crying. He's got tears rolling down his face because he knows all this shit he's done, despite the fact that he's going to lie about it and say that it was for the greater good and that the Jedi are evil. He knows it's not good. He knows what he's doing is bullshit, and he knows the Jedi weren't evil. He knows that. He knows it. He's crying. He's looking into the abyss. He's looking into hell. He's on a world of hell, and he's accepted his fate at that point because he believes that if at least he saves his wife and he has his kid, it's worth it. And road to hell paved with good intentions. Essentially, what's going on there. So I love that scene too. Not as much as I loved the other scene, but I love that scene too. Obi-Wan talks to Padme. Throughout this, I haven't talked about every single scene and interaction, but I will say that every scene Obi-Wan is in, I enjoy it because Ewan McGregor is great. Him talking to Padme was good. Obi-Wan talking to Padme, not Ewan McGregor talking to Padme. And then, of course, Padme going off to go find him at Mustafar, Anakin being an idiot for telling her where the fuck he was going. I mean, hey, that secret council of people we've been looking for and I want to kill? Of course, she doesn't know that Palpatine just knows where they are. They're at Mustafar. I'm going to be on Mustafar. Mustafar is essentially screaming, if you want to find me, come to this planet. So, I mean, she goes. Obi-Wan, like a jackass, shows up at the most inopportune time and makes loopy-ass Anakin Vader believe that somehow Padme brought Obi-Wan here to kill me. And all logic is thrown out the window. I accept that for the most part, as Vader he's completely lost it at that point, so he's like, he has no reason about him. But I do admittedly sit there sometimes and go, oh my god, Anakin, if you just shut up and ask him what he's doing there, and your wife, if she knew he was there, then this shit wouldn't have happened. But no, he decides he's going to assume he knows what's happening, and he decides to choke out his pregnant wife. Yeah, whatever. I still believe that he did that not as himself, so I'm not necessarily blaming the character and their relationship on, whatever. People take that as an excuse that somehow the relationship was always bad and that they shouldn't have been together. Whatever. I don't argue amongst yourselves, I guess. And then, of course, we get the battle, the duel between Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Palpatine. Let me say this. Oh my god, this video is going to be so long. I'm sorry. I'm real sorry that I'm going on this long, but I mean, it is my favorite film, so I have points. I have points I want to talk about. But I want to just say something, because I know a lot of people have a problem with the duel between Anakin, Obi-Wan / Yoda and Palpatine, is that it feels too rehearsed, it feels not natural, whatever. Okay. First point. Do you know how long it takes for someone who's not a, trained stuntman to learn how to do a specific fight, especially since they do have writers who write battle scenes. It's not just, oh hey, Hayden, pick up that lightsaber dummy, and you and Ewan just start freaking whacking at each other, and let's see if it works. No, especially Star Wars, because they are fucking lightsaber form and combat techniques. You can't just give actors a fucking wand, a stick, and go, here, have at it and beat each other over the head, and then we'll see if it works. No, you have stuntmen there, especially because they can't play the character, since Hayden and Obi-Wan or Ewan said that they would do it themselves, and that is the desired, actor, is that they do their own stunts, because then they don't have to go through the extra trouble of making the stuntman look like the person doing the fight. Although, I do believe there was one or two scenes in all of the prequels in which, like, Hayden actually was replaced by a double for whatever reason. But, you can't have a fight that has structure and has been written by a writer somewhere, and then, have them willy-nilly each other, and it wouldn't look right. It wouldn't look right, is all I'm saying. So yes, it was heavily choreographed because George wanted to pound into their heads that this is a very important fight, and I want it to go a specific way, because you have to get from point A to point B to point C to point D, where Vader loses his fucking his last arm, and his legs, and he gets fucking burnt. So, and also, if you are a staunch loreist, I guess, you can take into account that, hey, they're both powerful Force users. Hey, they're both really good duelists. They've been dueling one another for years. They're master and apprentice. Of course they would know each other's techniques. They've probably sparred 1,000,000 times. They know how the other one's going to react to them. They're basically just having a really, really, really hardcore sparring match with one another right now. So, of course they know one another's form. Palpatine and Yoda, it was mostly CGI, and then we get a little bit of lightsaber dueling, and then it's mostly a force combat. Palpatine picks up fucking senatorial little podiums and just fucking tosses them at Yoda. And I love the music. I love the duel. If you didn't love it, power to you. You're open. You're free to your opinion. I'm free to mine. I love the duel between both sets of characters, and I love the music. That set the mood too. I love the Duel of the Fates and the Battle of the Heroes being blended together. I love both of them apart. Especially Battle of the Heroes. I was always a Duel of the Fates fan for a long time, but as I started to get older and listen to Battle of the Heroes more, I was like, no, this one's got more emotion to it to me for some reason. And I know Duel of the Fates is more of just a high-octane kind of beat the shit out of each other, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul, but Battle of the Heroes is obviously more emotional and a more dour tone, because I mean it's the music basically spelling out for you. This is the end. You know that this is the fulcrum point from before. The music is basically telling you this is the climax of the end. The beginning of the end was when Anakin decides to go and save Palpatine from Mace, and the end of the end is here. And by end, I mean the end of the Republic, the end of the Jedi, not the end of everything. But the end of the end is here. So the music is... It's sad. It's octane. It's high octane because it's two people that, you can gauge that they do care about one another. You can gauge from, especially if you're a lore junkie, you know that they care about one another as brothers at this point. Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor delivers great lines. Hayden, they're a little stiff because, again, so much control from George Lucas. And Obi-Wan admitting that he failed Anakin, that he even pleads with him, saying, when they're on those little things over the lava river, he's like, Chancellor Palpatine is evil. And I know people want to make fun of the dialogue. I don't care if you want to make fun of the dialogue. I don't care if you didn't like the dialogue. I liked it. I know it was delivered stiffly. I know it's flawed. You don't have to tell me it's flawed. I know it. I still loved it. So, there you go. But Obi-Wan in that moment saying, Chancellor Palpatine is evil, and him saying, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil, and him saying, you are lost, it was, even at that moment, Obi-Wan is essentially is trying to go, no, listen to me. We can still save this. And that's, he was giving him another chance. And then, of course, you have the high ground scene, and you know where that's going, you know what happens. It's a little painful to watch. But also, what's interesting is, to me, I always found it kind of funny. It is one of my little issues, I guess, with the scene. Is that when Obi-Wan gets onto the rock and essentially goes, "It's over. I have the high ground." I always kind of went, even as a kid, I was like, "Well, Anakin, if you just go down the river a little bit and then get on land over there and meet him on the high ground, you will be on equal footing." Of course, it couldn't be that way because Darth Vader has to become Darth Vader as we know in episodes 4, 5, and 6. Admittedly, I accept that, although there is a part of me that's always like, go down the river, get onto land away from Obi-Wan, and then come at him again on equal footing, but whatever. I'm sure there's someone out there who can explain to me why he does it the way he does it, and then he gets fucked up. Luke and Leia are born, you get Darth Vader rise, Padme dies, Obi-Wan goes to Tatooine with Luke. They split up the twins because, they have to. Hey, yes, Bail Organa, take Leia, because you won't raise her to be a pompous little of a character. And you, Luke, you end up being fine. I have issues with Leia's personality, I'm not going to lie to you. And I blame it all on Bail Organa, so I hate him as a character for it, so... It's like, good lord, if she'd been raised by her actual parents, she wouldn't have turned out to be such a prissy little frickin' thing you wanted to choke. And couple that with the fact that she has to end up with Han Solo of all people, just... God. Fuck those two characters in the relationship, I don't care. My apologies. I know that's probably going to be a major theme in the next film coming out. Well, I don't care. Whatever. So yeah, I mean, I could start going into a long-winded, again, like things I liked about the film that people didn't like. There's not much more to say than what I've already said. The acting to me, yes, as usual with the prequels, it was stilted, it was flawed in many places, but Episode 3 felt like they were finally getting the formula right. And then you realize, well, that's it. They don't need to make any more films, so this is the extent of their formula building process. Getting to a point where it was really good, it's over now. CGI was fine to me. Like I said, there are parts of it that haven't aged that well. Like, I didn't mention it, but the scene when Yoda walks into Palpatine's office to face him as Emperor now, and, Master Yoda, you survived, all that. The office doesn't look that great anymore. You can pretty clearly see the office is completely CGI, except maybe the table. And that's another scene where it's like, not aging very well. But then once they're fighting actually inside the Senate chamber, then it looks good again. I'm like, how could you make the Senate chamber look good, but not his office? Whatever. That's just, one CGI scene. This, like, a lot of scenes where you have to look at the big interior of leading into the Senate building, that didn't look too great. Utapau in parts doesn't look all too great, but it looks mostly fine. I'm trying to think of other CGI scenes that just didn't work for me. No, I think there probably is a couple CGI scenes in the film that I'm forgetting that I was kind of like, not aging so well now, but they're probably so minor I wouldn't even bring them up if I remembered them anyways. So that, coupled with the fact that this is the film where it's transitioning now from beginning to ending in terms of like Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader. Because I always tell this to people. Um, Most people seem to assume that episodes 4, 5, and 6 are Luke's story or Luke, Leia, and Han's story. I tend to disagree. I think that the intention of 4, 5, and 6 was always Darth Vader's story. And especially if you look at the prequels, the main character is Anakin, and then if you look at the originals, Vader is like more prominent than even Han and Leia in like 2 out of 3 of the films, really. He has more screen time. You see all the shit he does. A lot of films with a villain like that wouldn't necessarily focus so much on him as episodes 4, 5, and 6 focus on Vader. And that's because, to me, it was always subtly saying Vader is like probably the main, if not the main, the secondly main character of this story, with Luke being the son of him. So of course he has to be either the main or secondary main character of the story too. Or maybe they're co-main characters, one just being the main character of the good guy side and one being the main character of the bad guy side, so to speak. And of course, for 1 through 6, 1 begins with a story leading to Anakin's coming into being a Jedi. Episode 6 ends with Darth Vader's end. It is 6 films set around 1 character. 3 are set to Anakin, 3 to Vader, the 6th ending with Anakin's return from being fucked up, being Vader, and only in moments before death and then after. So to me, episodes 1 through 6 is the story of Anakin Skywalker. Even when I'm watching 4, 5, and 6, there's a part of me that feels like when the Vader scene begins, this is like the main character scene. Like when you're watching a film, you know when a main character scene is happening. Like you can have secondary character scenes and secondary main character scenes, which are just as fine. But then, like, you know, you're watching Die Hard, and then John McClane pops up on screen. Well, obviously you're going to pay double attention because that's the main character and you like him. When the bad guy, Gruber, I think his name is, when he shows up on the screen, yeah, you're going to pay attention because you like him as a villain, but you're not going to pay double the amount of attention. Then, McClane, double the amount of attention because he's the main character. You focus. And to me, it was like that for Vader. Maybe some people think differently. Maybe I'm thinking maybe not analytically. Maybe I'm thinking too hard into it, but that's how I've interpreted things. That's how I see it. You see things differently? Good for you. Explain to me how you see things. We're obviously going to differentiate from one another. That's fine. But that's how I see episodes 1 through 6. And 3 is my favorite film. I am not ashamed to say that. I will never be ashamed to say that, because for the longest time, as a fellow Star Wars fan, I was made to feel like I could never admit to what I liked about Star Wars, and I always had to lie and say, oh, of course Episode 5 is the best movie, and of course Episode 1, 2, and 3 suck. When it's like, why am I lying to a bunch of people who don't give 2 shits about me or my opinion? Just to fit in with them? No, I don't need to fit in with them. I don't need to fit in with a generation of what are more and more becoming older men in their 30s and 40s telling everyone else what is and is not good about Star Wars. And then, of course, now you get your hipster 20-year-olds who always thought the originals were greater than the prequels, even when they saw the prequels first as kids. Whatever, go fuck yourself. I don't care. I don't care about... Like, if you tell me you're an original trilogy fan and you don't like the prequels, that's your opinion. I don't mind, as long as you can admit that I am fully within my right to like the prequels and not give a shit about your opinion on the matter. If I do give a shit about your opinion, it's because I like to hear why you don't like the prequels and understand your point of view, and not because you're saying, oh, hey, you as a person suck because you like something that I don't like. Grow up and maybe figure out that, you know, throughout your whole life you're going to meet people who think differently, believe differently, and act differently than you, maybe. And even this new trilogy, if there is a whole generation of people who love these new trilogy films, and I'm the asshole sitting here saying I hate the films, I haven't even seen them, or maybe I will one day somehow if someone puts a gun to my head, and you come to me and say, hey, I like the new films, I will go, that's great. You're allowed to love those films. I'm not going to make you feel bad for liking those films, but this is why I don't like them. This is why I don't want to see them. That's all you're going to get from me. You're not going to hear me say you're a terrible, terrible, horrible human being for liking something that I happen to not like. And for the longest time, that's how I felt with the prequels. And I'm not trying to elicit sympathy, I'm just saying how it is. So if you wonder why I'm so militantly protective of my fandom, it's that reason. Is people want to treat you like crap because you happen to like something within the same universe as them that they don't like. It's like, what sense does that make? What is the point? And you can disagree. I'm not saying you can't disagree. I'm saying treat people like shit. That's what I have a problem with. So, episode 3 is my favorite. I love it. I love basically everything in it. No one's ever going to convince me to not like it. No one's ever going to convince me that I need to stop liking it. Kind of like I'm not going to convince people who are original trilogy fanboys to go watch these new films. I'm not ever going to convince them to not go to this film. I'm not ever going to convince them that the movie's bad, even if it was a terrible movie, because they've already written it off as a good movie. I have no control over that. So, hour and 20 minutes, 21 minutes into this freaking long-ass rant. I'm losing my voice. I don't talk this much, usually. It's funny how I lose my voice so quickly. What did you think of episode 3? Did you like certain parts of it? Did you like all of it? Did you hate it? Why did you hate it? Why? How do you think it could have been better? How do you think it excelled your expectation? Did it actually beat expectation? Do you think that it was finally reaching a point where the prequels, at least in your opinion, if you don't like the films, were getting to a point where it's like they were finally getting to a steady flow and getting like a better flow and like feeling more Star Warsy to you? What did you think? That's all I'm asking. Make it less difficult for myself somehow. So that was that. That was my prequel experience. I have the DVD. I have the making of DVD, and actually I enjoy watching the making of DVD stuff sometimes because it's very interesting to see how they went through the process of making this film. I wish I had the making of for 1 and 2. I'm sure they're out there, but whatever. It is what it is. I mean, you're a prequel fan or you're not. You're an episode 3 fan or you're not. And, you tell me what you think. But like I said, an hour 22 minutes in, I've rambled long enough. I will have something new coming out, hopefully, at least by next weekend. I mean, with the way things are working out with my school schedule, it's pretty rough to make something during the week, so I'm trying not to. But I promise my next thing will likely be lore, legends, universe related, and not necessarily like a review of a game or something. If it doesn't end up being that way, I'll explain why I felt the need to do that video, but we're not there yet, and I will tell you all next time. Well, until next time, you'll hear me ramble again soon, I am sure of it. Alright guys, peace.